Hey everybody, welcome to Plots and Politics with my badass amazing friend Corinne Strait, and I am Sarah Blessing, and today we are talking everything Christian nationalism. It is becoming a force in American politics. It is really affecting Indiana. Why is it not Christian? Why is it about control and power and hurting people and hurting women? Let's get into it and let's separate it from the word Christianity, God. You need to realize they are tricking people to hurt other people, and that is not Christianity. So we are going to really open up the discussion and make it so that people of faith can openly talk about this and not be in fear of going against God. So let's do it. Corinne, how are you today? Amazing girl.
100%. I am doing so well, Sarah. I'm so excited to talk to you about this. And I really think as we look at a topic like Christian nationalism, people of faith within the Christian religion are actually the most influential people in this sphere. I am not a Christian. I was raised within a Christian home in a very conservative Indiana church with a very conservative approach. When I was a teenager, I realized that this wasn't for me, and I lost my headphone, and then I realized it wasn't for me, and that was the choice that I made. I did attempt to go back to church after I had kids, after I had my oldest son, because I felt like, oh, this is maybe what I'm supposed to do as a mother, and very quickly realized, oh, no, I cannot be here. But I will say, when I talk about Christian nationalism, it is never about vilifying Christians. It is never about vilifying the religion. It is never about talking poorly or attempting to oppress religious freedom. It is about recognizing the unequal power that Christian nationalism has gained within our political system and understanding the policy shaping that is happening as a result of that. And Christians throughout the history of our country have actually been at the forefront of preserving religious freedom, because Christianity is one religion. But it actually contains tens of thousands of denominations around the world. So there is always the question of, okay, sure, let's accept Christianity. Okay, now which version, which interpretation?
And I always feel like people pick which version closely resembles them,
100%.
their own personality. But then it's also a lot of your family. There's a lot of tradition. A lot of people are born into a certain church and they continue going to that. And then they have to decide when they start thinking more for themselves, are they going to stay with it? Or are they going to leave? Or are they going to go to another one? So I feel like it's in our deep desires to have something, to have faith of some kind. It's like a human need. And I have a lot of respect for the many denominations that love all, are less judgmental, and do not use their position on the pulpit to control others.
Yes.
And I see good in a lot of religions, but I also see bad because humans are flawed. So when humans get into the religion and they get on a pulpit and they start putting their own opinions when they're preaching to the crowd, sometimes people do not realize those are judgments, those are opinions, those are based on things that maybe are not accurate, and they're causing the group of listeners to believe things that could cause harm. And this is what we have with this Christian nationalism is actually causing harm to our country and a lot of harm to Indiana.
Yes.
And we're going to zoom in on our lieutenant governor today, right? Micah Beckwith?
We sure are. And I'm going to pull up a picture here because the reason I said, okay, this is the episode we have to do this week. This photo, if I can pull it up here on screen.
Yep. Good job, girl.
So earlier this week, Micah Beckwith posted on his Facebook, so his official lieutenant governor page, that he was in Terre Haute because Micah is doing this series around the state where he is talking with what he calls faith leaders, which is another kind of coded language that we have to be aware of. When he says faith leaders, he means Christian pastors. He is not talking about people of
And a
any other
certain
faith.
type of Christian pastors.
An evangelical.
He's not inviting the Presbyterian church that supports the Pride community in Cordon here. He's not inviting them. He's
No,
not inviting Methodists, I don't think. He's not
no.
inviting certain groups that are more loving and accepting, um,
Yes.
which is the version I've been taught, the Jesus that says, do not judge, love all. That version, he's not setting those at the table. So just realize that when he's saying that, it's coded language, meaning the people that think like him, the Christian nationalist people.
And that is very intentional because he is an elected official. So he can say there's nothing wrong with faith. There's nothing wrong with being a person of faith. And that way it kind of, it can protect him a little bit from any kind of violation. But where I think he is really crossing the line is in this photo, which is there are flyers and pamphlets on top of this table. And the tablecloth has the official seal of the Lieutenant Governor of Indiana. And in the,
Well, it has his name. He definitely likes his name there.
the official government seal of an Indiana elected official. In his official capacity, he is promoting this information that is on the table. And the flyer that stuck out most to me is a flyer that I've actually seen before, which is why it looked familiar. And if you go over all the way to the right of the table, it's the flyer that is closest, the second one over. And it has like a maroon, and I'll describe it to people that are just listening, but it has like a maroon rectangle and it has a blue banner on it.
Yeah.
Like, that flyer looks familiar. And so I zoomed in on it, and it actually says at the top, biblical citizenship. And that was something that really jumped out to me. And so I did some searching and I found the flyer. This flyer is incredibly present in evangelical churches like the church that Micah Beckwith is, or I'm not sure if he is still an active pastor now that he's elected, but was an active pastor, Life Church in Noblesville. Biblical citizenship is a course that is taught by Patriot Academy. And Patriot Academy is very much rooted in this idea that Christians are in a war against a secular world, and they have to fight to preserve the Christian ideology on which this nation was founded, according to them. Upon this nation was founded. The other pamphlets on this table are promoting pro-life organizations. And then the red folder here is actually for LifeWise Academy, which is an organization that offers Bible study during the school day. And
Separation of church and state? What are you?
No. This has been deemed legal because it's a voluntary program. Well, if it's voluntary, but it's during school hours, so
can the kids opt out?
They can opt out, but what a lot of parents say who have had this experience is that their kids are in the 4th, 5th, or 6th grade and are getting made fun of, are getting bullied if they are opting out.
I was going to have to teach my kids what to say if they're getting bullied because I'm opting out.
Opting out.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's actually, whether it takes place on school grounds or the kids get on a bus and head to a church and get Bible study, and then they come back to school, and because it's voluntary, that's how they get around it. But this Bible study is it's the evangelical gospel Christian nationalist approach, and the curriculum is all about creating these soldiers. So much of the terminology is about a war.
I don't want my kids thinking they're at war. I don't want my kids. I don't want my 6-year-olds in kindergarten thinking they're at war and coming home and worried. I've had my son, his friends have come up to him and cried to him, worried about his soul.
Yeah.
I've had this happen.
Same.
And I've had
family members do that.
And I've had to hug them that are crying and say, you don't need to worry about my child's soul. It's so sweet that you are. Don't worry. And I'm sort of upset at the propaganda they're getting from these adults telling them that, and I'm sure they believe it. They believe that if they don't give their hearts over to Jesus, they're going to burn in hell. But not everybody believes that. And when we tell our kids that, and we have our kids crying and fearing for their friends, I really think that that's a misstep, and you've gone too far here. Our kids don't need to be thinking we're at war.
Yes. And that it's really scary and it's really sad to think about younger children who could really feel The concept of hell that is taught to very young kids is something that is really, really scary. And I want to be really clear when I'm talking about the information on this table. There, I have no problem with the information on this table, and nobody should, because these are independent organizations. They are allowed. We have a freedom of religion in this country. Where the problem comes in is that we have a publicly elected official using taxpayer dollars to travel around the state to push these programs and to push this ideology. And Micah Beckwith is the lieutenant governor of Indiana. And he was very clear when he was running for office that he did not believe Indiana was conservative enough. And when he was asked about Christian nationalist ideology, he said, "Of course I am a Christian nationalist. I don't understand why that's a bad word. I am a Christian and I love my country." And so that's kind of where the gaslighting also comes in, because he is saying, look, what's the problem?
It's so
Christian is
easy
good,
to just
nationalist is good.
And
Yes.
it's a lens where we need to view it morally
Yep.
in each thing these people in power do. I want to talk a minute about how Micah Beckwith came to power, because I don't think everybody knows this.
Oh,
So
yes.
so Micah Beckwith either was or still is the pastor of a church in Noblesville. What did you say the church's name
It's
was?
called a Life Church.
A Life Church, and I assume it's a big church with a mega congregation.
It's a pretty big one. Yes.
So he has a pretty large pulpit and he's pretty famous there. He wanted to become lieutenant governor.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Braun, who was the nominee for Republican governor, had another person picked out that he wanted to work with. Micah Beckwith was too extreme, was too Christian nationalist for our governor, Mike Braun.
Yes.
So the way you elect in Indiana your lieutenant governor is by delegates. So
Mm-hmm.
I was a delegate for the Democrats, and I went and I voted for Terry Gooden because that's who Jennifer McCormick wanted. And I'm friends with Jennifer McCormick. And I'm like, well, I'm going to pick the person she wants to work with. So I voted for Terry Gooden, and I voted for my good friend Destiny Scott Wells for Attorney General. That was
Mm-hmm.
really fun to get to vote for a friend. And I'd already met Terry too. So our party on the Democrats, we had about 2,000 delegates elect our people, and we elected the people that I think everybody wanted. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The Republican convention, the Republican delegates, Micah Beckwith had been planning this for, I guess, years, and he
Yes.
had his own congregation become delegates. He
Mm-hmm.
stacked them, since you only need a few thousand. He stacked a majority of delegates. And when they went to the Republican convention, Mike Braun had been endorsing somebody else that wasn't as extreme, and his congregation elected him lieutenant governor. So this was a very calculated plan to give him this power, and now he's using it to further his Christian national agenda and to get his biblical scary teachings in public education. So
And this
just
is
realize
not,
that this is not
yeah,
a good Christian plan.
nope.
This is using that name for power. And Micah Beckwith openly talks about his vision of women and what he wants of us. And it is definitely not what you and I are doing, Corinne. It
No,
is supporting your man, and the man is in charge, and the man's in charge of the money. And you have a bunch of kids and you stay home and you do what that man says. That's his version of Christianity. That is not the version of Christianity I see down here.
no.
So just realize he is using these words to try to act like it's all Christian, and it's a version that's scary and powerful and very sexist. Yeah.
And the picture that I put up here is of Micah Beckwith and one of his
He's got the hat
staffers.
on, the
He has
47
the
hat.
white hat on. Yep. And behind them with the microphone is Charlie Kirk, who is the CEO of Turning Point USA. This was an event that happened this week on the campus of Purdue University, where Charlie Kirk and Turning USA came to Purdue and put on a live show in front of an audience. And Turning Point USA is an incredibly powerful Christian nationalist organization. They endorse, such things as, outlawing divorce, outlawing abortion completely, repealing marriage equality, Christian education in all schools, the separation really of, privatizing education. It's an incredibly toxic ideology.
And it makes sense now to me, Corinne, because they think they're at war. They
They
think
they
they're at
100%
war
think they're at
with
war.
everybody else. They're trying
Yes.
to indoctrinate our children to get them on their side of the
Mhm.
war when there is no war. And we're
Yes.
trying to promote community and love for all and working together to better everybody. And they're
Mhm.
trying to divide us and fill our children with fake propaganda.
Yes.
And
And
also
that's
realize
and that
this is a calculated plan, right? This is not Micah Beckwith came up with this.
no, oh
This is
gosh, no. This is
it's
a
a what you're talking about with the Charlie Kirk guy, right? They've had this
yeah.
plan for years. They're all sharing the knowledge. They're teaching everybody how to do this.
And Charlie Kirk is only 31 years old. He
Wow.
founded Turning Point USA in 2012. So he was not even 20 when he founded this organization with the help of some very influential financial backers. And
Ooh.
so because Charlie Kirk was somebody who just he presents very well, he is a tall, good-looking dude, and they knew that he was going to be the face of this movement. And of course, it did not originate with him. It did not originate with Beckwith. We will talk about where it did originate. But I wanted to go back just a minute, Sarah, and touch on how Micah got elected, because a lot of folks don't know that the governor doesn't choose their running mate. And so Micah Beckwith actually did something that no one has ever done before, and he campaigned for lieutenant governor. He went around the
Wow.
state and campaigned.
I didn't even
And
know that.
yes. Oh yeah, he was going all over the state of Indiana and campaigning. And there was just an event that was held in the last week of March. It was a panel discussion on the stage at Life Church in Noblesville, which is Beckwith's church. So he was there with the state comptroller and a couple of other officials from state government on the stage talking about how they are implementing Doge for Indiana. So Indiana Doge. And Micah talked about, they're praising Elon Musk, they're praising President Trump on the stage of Noblesville Church, Life Church in Noblesville, which is a tax
Wow.
exempt
You know, I want to put up
organization.
this comment from Roxanne.
Yep.
A heart for each one of you girls. If they continue to talk politics from the pulpit, then they need to give up the luxury of not paying taxes. That's what
It's
comes to my mind when you're saying he's preaching about how great Trump is on the pulpit.
absolutely. They
Whoa.
are up there, and because they're using Life Church as their kind of as their stage, there's a lot of gray area about the tax exempt issue of this, and we'll get into that in a little bit too. So anyone who wants to think that this is kind of a conspiracy of how Beckwith got elected, Beckwith said at this event he credited the members of Life Church in Noblesville and the members of Living Stones Church in Crown Point, Indiana, for giving him the lieutenant governor nomination victory, because there were over 60 delegates for the Republican State Convention in Indiana that came out of those two congregations. Over 60 delegates. Micah Beckwith won the nomination by 63 votes. So and
Wow.
he acknowledged this openly on stage. So this is not a conspiracy. This was very calculated. So that's where it gets into, why is this a tax exempt organization when they are very clearly emphasizing a political agenda? And there's a lot of really scary stuff that is coming out of this, unfortunately. So yeah, that's not a conspiracy. He said it publicly. He admits it. This is exactly what he did, and he knew what he was doing from the very beginning.
And I
And
think again, people struggle to talk about this, and you're brave and badass and amazing. So and I'm willing to talk about it with you. Um, it's so hard to talk about religion because we do not want to insult any religion.
no, of course
We are
not.
just trying to explain this man, along with others, are using the name of God and Christianity and religion and their
Mhm.
pulpit to do this war, to
Yeah.
act like we're in a war against people that don't believe in their type of God, their version of God, and that we need to get them on our side or push them away or whatever. And it is scary. And they're using government money. They're
And
using government money.
where it really upsets me is what I see as the exploitation of someone's religion, the exploitation of someone's personal faith, because at its core, someone's religious belief or spiritual belief is very personal. And when I see someone making a lot of money, like a Heritage Foundation, a Turning Point USA, a CPAC, when I see somebody making a lot of money exploiting the fears of people within the United States, within a political populace, I really get upset by that because there is a true economic reality that has changed over the last several decades where CEOs are making exorbitant amounts of money. Health insurance, housing, food, basic necessities, the costs have skyrocketed. Most people are struggling financially in this economy. And instead of actually acknowledging some of the economic forces behind those changes, groups like this have massive reaches and massive audiences. And they are going to go out and tell you it is because gay people got married. It is because women have the right to vote. It is because of DEI. It is because of CRT
A
being
woman
taught.
was able to divorce her husband.
Correct. It is because of the deterioration of the American family. So anytime you hear this, the traditional American family, that is very coded language for them to push a heteronormative white Christian family as the norm, as what should be expected of this entire country. And when they don't see that, when they see a diverse makeup of people, they tell you that's why your groceries are expensive. That's why you are not getting paid what you should at your job. So it's an exploitation hidden behind a mask of Christianity. And that to me is incredibly dark and disgusting. And that is why Christians are the ones fighting the hardest against this, because they see their beautiful faith being weaponized. And they hear somebody like Micah Beckwith, who was just on a radio program a couple of weeks ago, talking about, how empathy has become such a problem in our society. People have empathy for the immigrant because they are not upholding the laws of this nation. And so he said, he is an elected public official in Indiana. And he
Micah
said,
Beckwith said,
Micah Beckwith, when I face the Lord someday, the Lord is going to ask me, what did you do to uphold the laws of the United States? That is how they are viewing this, as their ticket into heaven. And so it has very much become a vertical ideology instead of a horizontal ideology. So when you think of vertical, you think of my personal ticket into heaven, my personal ticket into the promised land. When you look at a horizontal application of that ideology, you look at the good for the community. You think about what Jesus actually did, which was breaking bread with burglars and prostitutes, using the word of the time, sex workers, breaking bread with these people, with the least among us, right? He built community. That is a horizontal view of Christian ideology. Somebody like Micah Beckwith, Charlie Kirk, Ben Shapiro is another one, Candace Owens. These are very well-known names that talk about a vertical ideology. This is about my ticket to heaven. And I am going to make sure that I am insured in heaven because I interpret the Bible in this fashion.
And then they expect everybody else to interpret the Bible in that way too.
Correct.
And we have tens of thousands of Christian religions,
100%.
many fantastic ones that promote love and peace. And
Yes.
This is the version he's going with and saying we all need to follow. This is why when we have protesters, I don't think everybody understands this. This is why when there are protests, people dress up in the Handmaid's Tale outfits, the red robes with the white. And that's a book written by Margaret Atwood, and it's a show. And I think the last season's coming on next week. And that is this version. It's this Christian nationalism version coming, and they take over our democratic America, and they put on a new nation called Gilead, and they take their children and they separate them by gender, and they completely indoctrinate the kids into this type of thinking. And then also in this world, because of pollution, it's very hard to have children. And so they kidnap women that can have children, and that's the main character. She's a woman that already had a child and she was happily married, and they kidnap her and they take her child from her, and she loses her husband, and they force her into with a family to have the guy's child, even though he's married to somebody else. That woman can't have a child because of the environmental problems. And whenever we're comparing, people probably think women are being dramatic when they're wearing those robes and the things. But Margaret Atwood actually wrote that book on 100% true things that had already happened with different governments around the world. She just combined it into her own made-up government. Every single one of those things had already happened. So she was trying to explain to people this can happen if we don't fight for democracy, if we don't constantly fight for our rights. And us as women, we are seeing we're losing our rights. I had more rights when I was born in 1980 than I do now in 2025. And I had more voting rights. Like we're losing, it's getting harder to vote for women.
Hmm.
They're doing stuff about changing your last name and things, right? Like I'm sure
Oh,
you know
the Save
the
Act
Save Act.
actually passed the House yesterday.
Is this
They
nationally?
This is nationally. So the Save Act is it's HR 22, which was introduced in the House of Representatives. It passed yesterday with 4 Democrats actually joining Republicans to vote in favor of it. And it would require proof of citizenship to vote. And it's especially going to affect anyone whose current last name is different than what they were born with on their birth certificate. So
That's me.
that
My last name has changed.
that is married women, largely married women. And you can prove this either with your so it's an additional barrier, because a lot of people say, well, what's the big deal, just get your birth certificate and go. It's an additional barrier that doesn't exist
I do not
largely
want to
for
take
white
my
men.
birth certificate to vote. I want to take my ID.
You have to go re-register, go prove it, re-register. You take your birth certificate or your passport.
And not
And
everybody has a passport. Those cost
correct,
money and take time.
less
Not
than
everybody leaves the
half.
country. That's a privileged thing, a money
About
thing.
40% of Americans have a passport, which that's a stat that I've always found really interesting, because most other countries are over 75%,
Huh.
because a lot of other countries are encouraged to go see the world. They're kind of, and Americans are kind of taught that, like,
How
no,
great we
this is the
are,
best country in the
and
world.
our
Don't go
country is
anywhere.
big. You can go to a
It's
lot of
huge.
different climates in our
Yep.
country. We are lucky for that. But yeah, so I have a passport. So you're telling me I'm going to need to go take my passport to my driver's license branch?
Yeah, to go prove your voter registration. You'll probably have to go to your county clerk. Yeah.
I'll have to
To
go to my county clerk.
Yep.
Wow. So we're going to
Hmm.
have to do a lot of teaching if this
So
finalizes
if
on
this
how to do
finalizes,
this.
thankfully, it looks like it has a very difficult road in the
That's
Senate.
good. I hope so.
So if you do want a call to action, reach out to your senator. And this is your national senator, not your state senator. Reach out to your senator and tell them to oppose the SAVE Act, and really talk about the barrier that this presents to married women, because that is something that where to they can appeal to this traditional family thing. It's like, well, you wanted us to get married. I thought we're doing what you wanted us to
They
do.
want us to get married but not vote.
They don't want us to vote.
They
No.
don't they
So
want us
this
to let the man vote for us. Now, I have when I campaigned, both times I campaigned for county council and for state house, ran into women that said, "We are not registered to vote." And I go, "Oh, do you
Yes.
want to be?" And they say, "No."
No.
And they're in those like skirts and their hair is fancy. So they're, I don't
Mhm.
know what type of religion it is, but some type of Christian evangelical religion where they are told the man in the
The
household votes for
household vote.
them.
That's
And
usually
my
there's a lot of
heart,
that in the Pentecostal community.
yes, and my
Yes.
heart goes out to these women that have not been following. They're not taught
No.
what's going on in our country. They don't know that they should be considered equal, that they are not the weaker sex, and that the man should be decided. They've been taught from birth that the husband is in charge. And so when I ask them if they want to register, they look at me in horror, like I am telling them
Mhm.
something sinful. And I wanted to get into that sin word a little bit because I do not like that word. I do not like the word sin, guilt, and shame. And I will not teach my children to feel those things. But
Yep.
I was taught them. I was taught to feel those things. I was taught to view the world in sin. And I personally believe we should view the world in morally right and morally wrong. And we should try to always do what's morally right.
Yes. And this the point here that Tiffany is making has been brought up quite a bit in debate on the floor in the House in DC, of the fees that are associated. Even the fee that's associated with needing to get a copy of your birth certificate. I was born in a different county than I live in currently, and I did not have my birth certificate. I had to mail away for it, pay a very small fee. I think it was $8 or something silly like that. But again, it's a one additional step, and that was so I could get a passport several years ago. And thankfully, I do have a passport that matches my birth certificate. But that again, that's a financial
So
barrier, and
my passport does not match my birth certificate.
so it's actually, I think your passport is fine. I
Oh,
think it's
okay.
fine,
So Tiffany
because that
said,
proves your citizenship.
okay, thanks. So Tiffany's a new friend of mine. Love you, Tiffany.
Hey,
She said
Tiffany.
almost $200 in government and local fees.
Yes.
Plus, they require you to submit your original birth certificate with the paper that worked.
Yes.
That's if this new SAVE Act gets
Yes.
passed,
And
and
let's
hopefully it's
hope
not.
it's not going to. There's a very slim margin in the Senate. So let's hope that it does not pass, because we really just have to talk about voter disenfranchisement. And it doesn't matter what what they say the intention is. We know the result is voter disenfranchisement, because anytime you put up a barrier, anytime you make it more confusing, or more a more obstacle to have to jump over, it lowers people's participation. And so this is why I mean, I say this all the time, like I'm a friggin' broken record. If voting didn't matter, they wouldn't make it harder to vote. So Democrats have to stop saying that their vote doesn't matter. It does. If it didn't, they would make it easy to vote. And
Right.
this
So
is very, very
we're all going to
simple.
have to work together
If this passes, the
to
education that we're going,
regardless. And even if it doesn't pass, it's already hard enough to vote. Indiana is one of the hardest states to vote in. We have some of the lowest voter turnout in the country. Um,
consistently.
Yes, and so it already is harder to vote in Indiana. Did you know in California and in other states, you can have same day voter registration? You
Yep.
can be a new voter. You've never voted before. Maybe you
Walk
just
right
turned
into the polls. Yep.
right in. They sign you up and you go vote. Whereas people come to us and they're like, "Oh, I just turned. Is it 18? I just turned
18.
18." And then they're like, "Well, you didn't register several months ago, so you
Yep.
can't vote." And
You
that's so
can't vote.
stupid. And then I've had people come in that registered to vote with their license branch, and they messed up, and we
Mhm.
don't have the record of it, and they can't vote. And so you
It's
got to check it. Even when you register and sign up, you got to double check it here because there's human error.
all the time. And so we know what works in other places, in other states and in other countries. Automatic registration as soon as you turn 18. And to anybody out there who is concerned about fraud, I mean, I brought up the Heritage Foundation earlier. The Heritage Foundation is an incredibly conservative Christian nationalist policy think tank and policy influencer in
And
the
they have a lot of
United
money.
States. They have a ton of money, and they actually have an election fraud tracker. You can go to their website. It's very interesting to dig into. They have been tracking election fraud, proven cases of election fraud over the last 40 years. There are only around 3,500. So in 40 years, in all of the elections that we have had, 3,500. Even if you applied that number to one election, it would not have made the difference, let alone 3,500 people spread out over 40 years. And the vast majority of these fraud cases are honest mistakes. People vote in the wrong place. There are so many on there that went to the
I've
wrong
worked the
polling
polls. I've
location.
worked the polls 2 times, and I've seen human error a few
Human error.
times. It
Yep.
is not on purpose.
It's not. Most people, sometimes it is. There are a couple of people that have been convicted of manufacturing voter registrations and stupid things like that. But no, this is the fraud
So what the
idea.
real problem is voter suppression, like
Yes,
Indiana does. And Indiana's, I imagine they're trying to make it harder to vote now, but
100%.
Indiana,
SB 10 just passed and is awaiting
oh,
the governor's signature, which removes student IDs as a valid form of voter registration.
a lot of
So
students do not have driver's license.
they don't
And
have
it
Indiana
doesn't,
driver's
I don't
licenses.
understand. So you have to drive to vote? Not
Yep, you have
every
to go get a
person
state ID to
drives.
vote. Yep.
I mean,
They just, again, but they're like Tiffany
it's
said with the
just an extra
passport, there's a
step.
cost.
There's an
Yeah, you
extra
have to
step.
go to the license branch and you have to
College
pay.
kids, they're busy, or kids
Yeah,
that are working, they're busy, they don't understand all the laws, they're a young adult. It's going to be on us that are tracking it to find them and help them register to vote and help them get the IDs, like we're going
mhm.
to have to. Corinne, I'm hoping you'll help me with this. We're going to
100.
have to learn
Absolutely.
the new laws, and we will say it on this show. We will put up the documents, we will put up the rules, we will help you.
We will
And
keep
then
educating
hopefully, as
people.
we grow and turn more national, other states can do that too. We can make sure we're sharing the right information for each state on how to vote and register
Yes.
to vote, because we have to take back our democracy, because apparently we're at war.
We are where
And
everybody
we
needs to
gotta,
be a Christian soldier, right?
and so we need to protect our children so they don't
Uh-huh.
have to go to war.
Oh my
Right?
gosh. Yeah. So, and voter suppression, there are lots of things that kind of go hand in hand with Christian nationalism, trying to suppress women's right to vote, make it difficult for immigrants to vote, removing sex education, making birth control more difficult to access. There's a lot of pro-birth propaganda that comes out of the Christian nationalist movement.
That I imagine our kids are going to get in school if they're
Oh
going to
yeah,
these Bible schools.
and they don't, and the idea that no sex education, that is very deliberate to show, to not teach consent, to not teach preventative, how to prevent pregnancies, to not teach any of that. And so when young girls, especially, do not understand consent, they do not understand sex, they don't understand their bodies, all of that is very deliberate. So you have a very naive group of women going forward and girls going forward. And this is reflected in teen birth rates. States that do not have comprehensive sex education, like Indiana, Oklahoma, Texas, a bunch of others, have the highest teen birth rates because girls are not they are not taught about sex and consent largely. And so there's another thread that you can pull in the Christian nationalist community, and Micah Beckwith has been very vocal about this as well, is that exceptions for rape, incest, life of the mother, etc., those go too far. Those should be repealed. Because if it's God's plan that you were assaulted and you became pregnant, if that's God's plan, then you deal with the consequences. And we have seen lawmakers talk about this openly.
This is so scary. This is their plan. This is this Christian nationalism that we have to recognize. This isn't God. This isn't religion. This is control. They want women to be very poorly educated. They don't want these women to go to college or to go away to college and to get factual information about sex and consent and other religions and other options. They don't want women to know the other options. No. They want to be told you are to be kind, you are to be passive, you are to respect your elders, especially your male elders, you are to get married young, and you are to pump out a bunch of children, and you stay home and you take care of those children, and you don't concern yourself with worldly issues or state or what goes on. Your husband will vote for you. And I know that sounds ridiculous to a lot of us listening, but that is going on. I am meeting those people when I'm campaigning and when I'm out talking to people in my community. They're here in Harrison County. I imagine there's some in Elkhart County.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
And my heart goes out to those women.
Because they have been taught in such a way, which is why it's interesting that the Christian right.
When I meet them, they seem to believe it. That's the thing. That
of course they do, because that's what they've been raised in. And so to fault them for the choices that they are making when they're not really choices, it's kind of these are not voluntary actions. This is something that they are just going along with because that's the life that they're supposed to live. They believe they're supposed to live. And when you look at the Christian right and the talking points, it's all about traditional values, and that comes back to being a very discriminatory approach. And they usurp the word God to mean a Christian God and a specific version of a Christian God. And that is where I want to bring in this dude named David Barton, because all of this modern Christian nationalist movement, the Turning Point USAs, the CPACs, the Micah Beckwiths, the Heritage Foundations, all of this modern movement can really be tied back to this one guy. And it's unbelievable how powerful this man is within Christian nationalism. So David Barton is a man from Texas. In the mid 1980s, he started this, and I'll call it a crusade, not unironically, like a Christian crusade. He started a crusade to redefine what our founding fathers meant when they founded this country. And to put it out there and just be very, very blunt with this, the United States was not founded as a Christian nation. This is not up for debate. It has been, not only can you look at the writings of the founding fathers, you can look at future historians, Supreme Court decisions, even theologians who look through all of these documents and have confirmed over and over and over again it was not founded as a Christian
And there
nation.
was very specific reasons why it wasn't. If you
Yes.
look back in history, if you look at all of the wars, all of the people that have died in the past because their government told them they had to follow this one religion, and so they had to go to war so that they could decide which religion it was going to be. And then people that lived in one country and followed a different religion, like Catholics and Protestants, have been fighting for years and years and years in
Mm-hmm.
Europe. And so many people died over it when it could have been, maybe we take government or religion out of it and we let you pick, and then we don't make your children die at war over it. So they had come knowing that. They knew,
Yes.
look at how bad it is when your government makes the entire country follow a religion and only some of them follow that religion. Maybe we found it on, why don't you have freedom to go to what religious church or don't go to church?
Yeah.
That's your choice. And I think that is very powerful and important. And it seems like this group of Christian nationalists want to say, no, we're a Christian nation.
Yes.
We're based on this. When you're going to do our version that hurts women, that hurts everybody
Yeah.
except for the people in power that are bossing us, bossing all of us and telling us what to do. And we have to say, that's not our founding fathers' original plan.
No.
And let's learn some history, which they also like to make sure we don't learn history, by the way. They like to control
Exactly.
what's in our history books. Wonder why.
Wonder
And
why.
yeah, and so education's going to get us out of this. So let's make sure our women aren't educated.
Like with proper information. And so somebody like David Barton can come along, and he is not a historian. He is not, I believe he does have like a religious studies degree, but he has written a ton of books where he really redefines founding documents. And he actually had a book back in like 2012 or 2013 that was pulled from the shelves by publishers because it was found to be so full of lies. He takes quotes and he fabricates quotes from our founding fathers to say, no, actually, they meant the United States is an evangelical Christian nation. And here's the proof that I have for you. And when you look at his writing, it is just speaking to people who already want this to be true. So it's confirmation bias. It's somebody like Micah Beckwith
Can
saying,
you
of
explain
course,
what
I knew
confirmation
it.
bias is for
Sure. So
people?
confirmation bias is kind of your assumption of information, your assumption of something that you either want to be true or need to be true, and then you go find the information that confirms that. So if I'm somebody like Micah Beckwith, who is a right-wing evangelical pastor who has been preaching for years that this nation is a Christian nation, and I come across a book written by David Barton, who is not a credible historian or theologian, but I come across his book and he says what I already want to believe, then boom, there it is. There's the proof. And when you go look up David Barton's books on different booksellers, the reviews are just full of confirmation bias. It is people saying, I have always believed this was a Christian nation. I have always believed this to be true. I knew it in my heart. God spoke to me. Jesus spoke to me. Thank you so much, David Barton, for proving this to me. And then
Wow.
when you actually go look at what David Barton is using to prove it, there are no references for any of these quotes.
So
And
just
it's
realize
very,
that
yeah,
their propaganda that they're pouring out to their base is based on fake things.
yes.
And don't don't hate them, you all. Don't yell at them. Don't bully them. Care
Mm,
about them. And if you know anybody that believes these things, lovingly pull them out. Listen to them, explain that they've been lied to, try to prove maybe just one thing. Don't bombard them with a bunch of stuff. Just pick one of the things that they think that you know is not true. Spend time, and sometimes that can pull them out when they're like, "Oh, I was lied to on this one thing. Wow, I thought
yeah.
everything they were telling me was true." And then they look at another thing.
Hmm.
You can pull them out. I know many of people who were. I'm one of them. I was told the man is in charge growing up when I was a teenager. I was told the man is in charge of the money, the man is in charge of things, and I just immediately was like, not the person I'm marrying.
Yeah.
I mean, that was
Not
just in
for
my head.
me.
I
Yeah.
didn't raise my hand and say it, but I'm like, whatever.
Not for
But
me.
but
Yeah.
just realize you can change. You can get these people out from this. Don't just
Mhm.
assume they're gone forever. I kind of feel like it's our job to protect and love each other as a community. So we can lovingly say, you have been lied to. Let me show you this one thing, and not say, you're stupid, you're wrong, you should check your facts.
Yeah.
You can do it in a loving way.
And we can show, I talk a lot about the forces in our political system that have been playing the long game and have been working for decades to kind of start to transform this ideology. And somebody like David Barton, founded his original organization in the mid 1980s. It was called Specialty Research Associates. And it was dedicated to what he called the historical research relating to America's constitutional, moral, and religious heritage. And he set out with the explicit goal to show that not only was the United States founded as a Christian nation, it was also founded as a right wing evangelical Christian nation. And all of the information that he uses to support his argument, most of it is fabricated and taken wildly out of context. The Declaration of Independence, and we'll just talk a little bit about the founding documents. So the Declaration of Independence makes two references to God. One of them is called Creator. So we were endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. And then there is another reference to God. Now, this is not me. This is literally centuries of historical research. When someone is using God or creator in that way, it is just the idea of a divine presence. It is the idea of someone that has an arc and is over the universe, because these folks were coming from the Church of England. They were ruled in England under the Church of England, which is the Anglican Church, that where the king was the head of it. So the King of England was the head of the church and head of state. That is what people were fleeing when they left England. These were people who wanted to have freedom of religion, and they did not have it in England. So they came to this new world and formed a new country based on religious freedom. And their entire setup in all of the founding documents and all of their papers is there will be no government established religion, no government endorsed religion. So the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which are our original founding documents of law, make no mention of God, creator, or Christianity, period. There is no word God in either of those documents. And the freedom from and of and for religion was paramount to the founding of this nation. And it's really important to push back on somebody like David Barton or somebody like Micah Beckwith, who endorses David Barton's views, and to say our founding fathers were very deliberate with the language that they used and the choices that they made. There were a couple of versions of our Constitution. There were a couple of versions of our founding documents. And in nowhere in those versions are you going to find any mention of a theocracy, any mention of a monarchy, any mention of a
What
religious.
does the theocracy
A
mean?
theocracy is really what you see in a where the head of the church is also the head of the state.
Oh, okay.
So your president is a priest.
Or the Pope is the president or whatever.
Correct. If the Pope was the president, we see this in Iran, I believe. Now it has gone through a lot of different versions. Is a theocracy. So
Oh,
the
wow.
imam is the head of state and is also the head of religion. And so all of the laws then are written in. Which is also very interesting because, again, Islam is not a monolith. There are many different
Right.
denominations within Islam, but it's one set. That's why there's been so many wars, because it's fighting within that religion
Yeah.
to who's going to be
To
the
keep
dominant
the peace. One
denomination.
of the most important and easiest ways to keep the peace in your country is to let people worship the way they want to worship or
Mm,
not worship.
Yep.
And if you look back through time, when you have that, which sounds very scary and awful, and you're controlling everybody, just imagine if you like this idea. Let's say that you follow the Christian national principles and you are totally for it. What if somebody came to power and forced you to be a different religion than what you are
Mhm.
now? Even you're 100% sure your religion is true. What if your government forced you to be a different religion? How would you feel? That's how we feel when we're not this group.
Mhm.
And sometimes I think they're so stuck in they're right. Their one religion is right. Well, guys, there's hundreds of thousands of religions.
So
Um,
many.
and it seems sort of arrogant to assume you're in the only one true one, doesn't it?
I mean, anytime somebody says something to me, I'll make maybe like a smart ass comment, or, people that comment on some of my videos, that whatever I'm saying or doing is against God. And I will say, well, which one?
I
I
know
mean,
that's a good comment.
there's
Which
literally,
God?
there's been hundreds of thousands of,
The
I mean,
the
Egyptian gods, they had a god for everything. I mean, the Greek gods, we want to talk about Greek mythology, all of those gods, the god of lightning, the god of thunder,
and I'm more of a person that I like to take wisdom from all multiple religions. I think there's good and bad in every religion, and so I like to learn from them. So, like, I just finished White Lotus season 2, or
yeah,
season 3. Have you
season
watched that?
3. I've not watched it yet. No,
It was
I did
brilliant,
1
I
and
loved
2.
it, and it focused on Buddhism, and I
Hmm.
really like a lot of the things of Buddhism. Buddhism says when you desire things, when you have want and desire and control, it makes you miserable, so you give those up and you accept the way things are, and you just love people and you try to keep the peace, and then you realize you don't have to have all those things that we're told give us pleasure. I like that. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna follow it. I'm not gonna, like, not eat delicious food and,
Yeah.
like, you know,
You're not going to
enjoy
dedicate
TV
your
like
life
I
to it. Yeah.
but I am going to work on making sure my soul, my happiness doesn't come from material things or from
Hmm.
pleasure things, you know? So it's like I'm not a Buddhist, but I
No,
really appreciate some of their
some of
core
the
things that
tenants.
they're talking about. And the
Yeah.
same with Christianity. I love how Jesus says don't judge people, love everybody. And
Hmm.
I try to do that. I try to look at people with empathy even when they hurt my feelings. I try to understand their viewpoint and then get over myself and my ego. So I
And
think
that's
it's bad. Yeah,
and
it's
what you
bad
just
when
said
people just pick
there,
one
when
version.
they pick one thing, but what you just said there about what you take away from Christianity are the teachings of Jesus about love and acceptance. And there are so many leaders within the Christian nationalist movement who are speaking very publicly about that is wrong. That is taking you down a path of sin. We are supposed to fight against this secular world. We are supposed to fight. So the idea of empathy, the idea of tolerance, the idea of openness and love and acceptance, they have co-opted to mean that's toxic and that's bad. And we can't, because we're again soldiers. We're supposed to be soldiers. We're supposed to be fighting. We're supposed to take up the sword. And there are so many different versions of this ideology, and there is an entire universe of in-person conferences and podcasts and books and church groups and Bible study groups and everything that are really focused on this masculine energy of strength and protection of the family. There was an event just last month where Micah Beckwith spoke at. It was a Turning Point USA. It was a Faith Forward Pastors Summit. And I do find it very interesting that Lieutenant Governor Beckwith shared some photos from that event, but there is no video of what he said that day. And
Ooh.
there is video of every other speaker that was listed on the docket except for him. I spent a couple of hours looking for it. And
Wow.
I could easily find every other person who was listed as a speaker, but not him. And there are
Wow.
photos of him on stage. So it's obvious that he was there and he was speaking. He had a microphone. But there is
But
no video of what he said.
he knew we, the women that are trying to
Yes,
protect our rights, would have put it on our social media. He
probably.
knew that.
So, yeah.
I wanted to a couple things. First, I just want to point out religions of the world, the majority of them were written by men.
Mhm.
And
It's
that's
morality
something that I
police.
struggle with. That's one of the reasons why no religion is telling me what to do. I will look morally. Is that morally right or is that morally wrong? I don't need a religion to say you do this because my version of God is telling you to. I don't need
Mhm.
that. But it's just important to realize it's a very manly written word in
Yep.
multiple places. There are a few religions, I'm sure, that are more women centered, but there are a few. Whenever I taught about Native Americans for fifth grade history, there were a few where the women were the ones
Mhm.
with the wisdom that
They
would
were the
teach down the
spiritual
wisdom,
leaders. Yep.
that their families would stay with the women's side, and they were the wise ones that you listen to. They are out there,
Yes.
but they are much smaller in number than the
And especially here
majority.
in the US, we don't really have a lot of that, in any meaningful numbers to influence culture at all. And so looking at how this ideology has made its way this Christian nationalist ideology has made its way into our politics. I mean, David Barton got a huge victory when Congressman Mike Johnson, was elected Speaker of the House. He's the congressman out of the state of Louisiana. He was elected Speaker of the House in 2023, and he is an adherent to David Barton's teachings. And so Mike Johnson speaks at David Barton events. He speaks very positively about the founding of this country being a Christian nation. And so for David Barton, this was a huge win for him. He went on a press tour, a social media tour in 2023. The work that David Barton began in the mid 1980s to permeate our culture with the belief that we were in fact founded as an extreme right-wing Christian nationalist nation finally made it to the Speaker of the House of Representatives. So this is a big, big deal. And we see it happening in places like Indiana. And I know Project 2025 has kind of become more of sometimes it's a cliche, like talking point in some places, because anyone who speaks about Project 2025 is accused of fear mongering. But actually what is included within Project 2025 are several different, mountains or categories of things that need to be worked on. And it is very, very clear that this is working towards a government establishment of religion. And when you rewrite the narrative that actually our founding fathers wanted us to be a Christian nation, when you start to rewrite the narrative, then you are able to implement that. So when people say, well, the First Amendment says freedom of religion, they will start to gaslight you and tell you, but that's not actually what it means. What they really meant was this. And I found this quote from Thomas Jefferson, and I found this quote from James Madison. And when we remove all of that history and all of that teaching from our schools, and it's replaced with the work of David Barton's books are on sale in churches like Life Church. You can find them listed on the bookstores of all of these, like, oh no, my microphone.
I can still hear you.
You can find them listed on the bookstores of all of these mega churches. And it's incredibly problematic because if that's the only history that people are getting, they are very primed to believe that, in fact, we were founded as a Christian nation. And so I really want to put it out there that if we were to be founded as a theocracy, if the United States was to be founded as a theocracy, that would have been written explicitly in our founding documents. So when people like David Barton come along, they are lying to you. They are lying to you and manipulating you.
And using the name of God to do it.
100%.
And we have to call that out.
Using the veil of Christianity as it must be good.
People to call it out are the Christian pastors, the Christian people. My dad is a Christian Methodist minister, and he is full on love everybody, support everybody, and he calls this out. People that are in that Christian faith or in that as a job, a clergy member, speak out against it. Regular people can speak out against it too. We can all use our social media to say this is not the type of Christian I am, and I don't want to be forced to follow that type of Christianity, especially if you're in a red state where you have someone like Micah Beckwith in power, using our tax dollars, using our state government label to advocate for this, trying to get our kids indoctrinated in public schools. We need to be aware of what's going on, and we need to voice it because we need to protect our children and we need to protect ourselves. And I really want to protect women and girls.
And it's really recognizing that the point of this kind of ideology is to secure and maintain power for a very small group of people. So these are the people that say, when someone says, well, Jesus was an undocumented immigrant. He was, they fled the census. And that's how they ended up, that's how they left, because they were fleeing the census from King David. So Jesus was an undocumented immigrant. And they reply with, but God tells us to uphold the laws of our land. And so they put the United States above Christian teaching. So anytime you talk about what was actually coming out of the mouth of Jesus to his followers, they say, nope, we're supposed to uphold the laws of our land. And I want to
keep going. Sorry.
No, I want to point out what Tiffany said here. That doesn't help that our money has the quote, "In God we trust" on it. And it does. And again, God, which God? There are literally millions.
I'm okay with people saying God. I have a problem with people saying which God. That's where I have a problem. But
that
I
God we
understand if people don't believe in God, I understand that. I'm just saying, at least they're not telling us which God.
But we know but we can kind of understand what they mean, because we can look at when this was actually put on our money and added into. So the Pledge of Allegiance, for example, one nation,
Under
indivisible used to be the line, and now it is one nation under God, indivisible.
Oh,
And so that was added in 1954, and it was
wow.
added in 1954 as a response to, this was during the Red Scare, this was during the communism scare, when we were going the McCarthy era, we were going after all of
We're
these
very
communists
scared
in
of
our
communism.
government.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so Christianity was seen as anti-communist. And so by placing this on, but again, that is something that David Barton points to and says, look, it is a Christian nation because that's what God means to them. So these terms are interchangeable to people like Micah Beckwith and David Barton, who use terms like faith and spiritual and religion and God. We all know what they mean. They mean evangelical Christianity. They mean extreme right-wing evangelical Christianity. And the fact that in a place like Indiana, we have somebody who so openly and bravely, unapologetically speaks in that fashion and displays materials like he displays at official public events, it's incredibly problematic. And it should be, we should be paying much closer attention to it than we are, because it is shaping our policy, and there is a need for some people to believe that they are in the right, that I'm correct and my beliefs are correct. And the kind of takeover of terms like indoctrination, the takeover of terms of religious freedom, that religious freedom to Christian nationalists does not mean their freedom to practice what they want. It's their freedom to not see anybody else not practice what they want. So the idea that if two men get married, that's actually a threat to my marriage, my heterosexual marriage, that's a very Christian nationalist belief, because of course it's not. Somebody else's marriage has nothing to do with yours. But they can say, well, when that gay family
Yeah, because
adopts kids,
God doesn't want it. It's like,
it threatens my family. If that gay couple adopts kids, it threatens my family. No, it doesn't. But if they just say that it does, then it
oh,
starts to permeate the culture, and they start
when
to
you
make
use
people,
God, people are like, well, I gotta believe that God said
it
it.
must be good.
It
I
must
mean,
be,
it must be
I
good.
would have originally thought it was okay, but now I'm like, oh no, we don't have that because my pastor told me that, and we're believing, he's saying what God said, and it's like we got to get out of that, and
Hmm.
we need to not be so afraid to call it out.
And it's
That's how we end this. That's how we. And I'm not going to say we're never going to have it. We're always going to have a version of this, but how do we get ourselves out of it? We educate everybody politely and lovingly. We explain that's not God, that's this person using God to control us, and that's not
mhm.
healthy, and that's not good for our country or the world. And we have all this evidence of history and wars and controlling what religion you need to go to. And I also just want to say, if you are following a religion and you're starting to think, huh, maybe 100% of what my pastor has been saying is not true, it's okay. It doesn't make him a bad person. I say things that aren't right and I'll figure out eventually. I mess up every day. It's what makes me human. I will learn and grow from that. Take out the words sin. Take out the guilt. Take out the shame. I don't like that some religions use that to control people. Forgive yourself and be moral. Do what's right for humanity and people. Do your best. Try not to hurt people. If you do hurt someone, say sorry and learn and grow. You don't have to cling to those unhealthy things, because then you don't feel good about yourself, and you're easier to listen to somebody else who wants to manipulate you because they're saying, look how bad you are, you did this one thing, you sinned, don't you have guilt, don't you have shame, ask God for forgiveness and then do what I say. And it's a way they control us. So I just don't like those words. I don't want my children thinking them, and I had to get them out of my brain because I had many a volunteer parent Sunday school teacher or youth parent come in and teach me very harmful things in my lifetime of being a church member. So I just wanted to throw that out, that my heart goes out to people. It is a tricky thing when people control church.
Hmm. And
When
and when those people who are controlling church are then able to control a secular government, and no one, I mean, kind of the overarching this belief that Christians are being oppressed, that we'll see on Fox News or something, is just it's just so silly.
I
Again,
go to the town council meeting down the couple blocks from me, and they pray their Christian prayer at the beginning, and I'm uncomfortable.
of
They're
course,
not being oppressed. If we can pray
100%
that
not being oppressed.
Christian group's prayer at the county meetings and the town meetings, they're not being oppressed. So that's just a way to make them feel like a victim, so we can try to get more control in our government.
Yes, and to say that my rights are being suppressed because those gay people got married, it's just it's very much they need to be the martyr and they need to be the victim. And when they
Hmm.
achieve positions of power, somebody like Micah Beckwith, who achieves a position of power, then gets to go out and evangelize using taxpayer dollars and resources. And our there are most of our communities have more churches than they do schools and libraries. So there are not Christians are not being oppressed at all. They are the dominant religion in this country. And Christian nationalism should be something that is an extreme fringe belief. And it's not unique to the United States. Christian nationalism exists in many countries all over the world. There's actually a Christian nationalist administration in power in Hungary right now. But in most other countries, it's a fringe belief. It's an extreme fringe belief. And it's just not here. And the panel that I referenced earlier that was held at Life Church in Noblesville, Micah Beckwith and the other administration leaders that were on the stage were talking very proudly about Indiana having the most conservative elected officials in the whole country. They wear this as a badge of honor. And that is how it leads to in really restricting the rights of the people that they govern, because they are governing based on their personal religious beliefs. And it's really, really damaging. It's really damaging.
Religion and government should be separate. It's supposed to be. We're supposed to have separation of church and state in American government. Our laws were written that way. Our founders wrote it that way. We are currently having extremists in power across the country, particularly in red states, changing our laws to put church, their version, in our government. They already have done some things, and they're going to be doing more. We need to let everybody know. Please share this episode with everybody, anybody that you think might benefit from it. I think I'm going to send this to some of my local people here in Palmyra that attend church that they're not Christian nationalists, they're loving. I think that this might help them understand what is going on, so that they have the language to say that's not our church, and then they can differ. I think the more people that know what's going on, they will know what words to use, so we can shine a light on it and stop it.
And these are really the social clubs of the day, because you're able to listen to these podcasts and go to these conferences. And so it's not just that you're going to church on Sundays. You're going to church several times a week. And then in your free time, you're attending conferences. And then in your other free time, you're listening to Charlie Kirk on a podcast.
And then you're sending your kids to Bible studies, Bible camp and stuff.
Yes,
And
out of
then
their
you're trying to homeschool them or teach a very religious curriculum, and they can only listen to Christian music or go to a Christian bookstore. They can only read Christian books. And I mean, it's a whole thing where they do not want you knowing what is going on in the rest of the world.
And when somebody, you mentioned separation of church and state, and this comes up a lot, and you will hear people like Micah Beckwith, Jim Banks is the senator, U.S. senator from Indiana. Todd Rokita is our attorney general here in Indiana, along with many other elected officials. They will say the separation of church and state is a myth. They're quoting David Barton when they say that.
Wow.
It is absolutely not a myth. It is not a myth. Separation of church and state is integral to the founding of this country. And when they tell you it's a lie, Micah Beckwith has said publicly, it is a lie. They're quoting David Barton. That's how
that guy
powerful
is so powerful. I didn't know. I've never heard of
crazy.
him. So thanks, Corinne.
That's how powerful
that
he's just a dude from Texas with a religious studies degree.
That's young.
That's all he is. He's just a dude from Texas, and he's been doing this since the mid 1980s.
Ah,
So when people say, "Oh, actually, there is no separation of church and state," that's a lie. They're quoting him, and because he has been pushing that narrative, he is the one that has been out on the forefront writing all of these books. Because when you write books and call yourself a historian and call yourself, an expert on this, and people want to believe it, they're going to find the book that tells them what they want to believe. And, that's why there are so many different interpretations of the Bible. There are so many different interpretations of, and we also have to, like, the Bible itself was written in Hebrew and version of Hebrew that it's not even modern Hebrew. So we're translating from language to language to language to language over and over, all the way to get it to English, to modern day English. We're doing the same thing with the documents of the founding fathers. The English they were writing 300 years ago is very different than the English we use today. So all of these things are being interpreted. And again, who is doing the interpreting? Largely, it is white men who are in power, because they are the most educated and they are the most privileged to even have the ability to read and write. So we're even looking back at a time in America when most women and people of color did not have the ability to read and write. So they're just being told what these books say. All of this is to instill a power structure. And so we cannot lose sight of history. And when somebody like Micah Beckwith is peddling classes from Patriot Academy, which again is founded on the ideology of David Barton, they teach biblical citizenship, which is about how you as an American, it's your responsibility to go and take the word of God. If you are a patriot and you love your country and you love your God, you have to fight for it. And so it's a very toxic ideology. And we see, and this is where we can go back to, and we can remove some of the emotions from this and just say, show me where it's working. Show me where our outcomes are improving. Show me where not teaching sex education in schools is actually lowering the abortion rate. Show me where there's no evidence, right?
no.
It's just, they come back to all the
They
time.
cover they say it's for these things to protect us, but it's really to protect them and keep themselves in power. And it's so
Mhm.
it takes a lot of time to uncover the actual truth of what they're doing. I think you did a really good job of explaining this. We'll go ahead and end in just a minute because we're getting long, but we'll talk
Yeah.
more about this, especially as it impacts Indiana. I want to know what's going to happen with these Bible schools. I'm really worried about that.
It's LifeWise. I mean, check your kid's school. LifeWise Academy is
I've
present in
had
Indiana.
I've seen papers come home
Yeah.
asking if I wanted to send my kid to some type of Bible stuff, and I'm just like, well, I'm not filling that out. So it may have already gone on into our schools. I don't
It
exactly
probably is.
know.
It's in most schools, and it's this if you're looking at this here, it's this red folder on the table. And so that's where it's like, I don't, it's just, it's, you think about if Beckwith would have any literature up encouraging a Quran study group at an Islamic society organization, how would that be interpreted? How would
Everybody would panic. I mean,
yes.
total panic. And honestly, what they are pushing is very panic feeling, because
Mhm.
this version of Christianity is a very scary one where men are in power and many people get hurt and you have to do all of these it's just a lot of control.
Yeah.
And so because it's clouded in a word that we think of favorably, it's being allowed to happen. And
Yep.
we really need to differentiate and say that's not my Christianity. So hopefully I'm seeing a lot of great churches push against this, and I'm seeing a lot of great pastors and faith leaders push against this, and I hope that continues, but we also it needs to grow, because
Yeah.
most Hoosiers don't know this is going on. I didn't fully understand until you told me. So it is alarming, but you guys, we can fight it. We're amazing. We're awesome. There's more of us than them. We can do this. We can do this. So don't lose hope. Um, and use morals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Use
Just
morals.
be a good person. It's
Be a
really
good
not that
person.
hard.
Fight for those that need it.
Yep.
Help people. Help your community out. Don't fear your community. We're not at war with each other, and we're going to support one another while we fight these fake things, this propaganda, this use of religion to hurt us.
A
We have to fight
constructed
them.
narrative,
Yeah, yeah,
just a
yeah.
constructed war and a constructed narrative, because we're supposed to take care of each other. And if anybody wants to follow the tenets of Jesus, that's what they're called to do. So, and that's really, like you mentioned, Buddhism. We look at Judaism, we look at Islam. Those are the tenets of many of our religions, is to take care of your community. And the fact that that's been taken away and twisted in such a horrible way. And if any, I'll just do one more pitch here. Go check out a book called Toxic Empathy. And it's a very difficult read, but it's written by an evangelical Christian woman, and it really it very much encapsulates where we are right now. That empathy is, and she is a Christian nationalist. She's on the side of evangelical Christianity. It very much encapsulates this idea that no, we're not supposed to be empathetic anymore, and that's a liberal left-wing ideology, to be empathetic. Christians are actually supposed to fight and be hard-lined and stand in their principles, and empathy is toxic. So
that is not the way I view that.
no,
That's
so
gross.
it's very much a twisting, of the teachings of Jesus and the teachings that are in the Bible. So yeah,
Thanks for
that's it.
being so
Yeah.
brilliant and researching and knowing so much about this topic. Thanks for doing this today. Um, you're so wonderful. I posted a thing on my own Facebook yesterday. It was like a picture, and it said, like, surround yourself with people who support you in rooms you're not in. And
Hmm.
I've done a lot of that this year. I've done a
Yeah.
lot, and you're one of those people, and it's such a loving friendship, and I just feel so blessed to get to do this with you. You're
And
so
it's so
freaking
fun
smart.
because, like, when I think about topics like this and I'm like, oh, I want to talk about that. Like, I'm like, I can't wait to talk about this with Sarah. Like, I'm
Oh, that means
excited
so
to talk
much to
about
me.
this with
How
Sarah.
lucky am I?
Like,
I
it's fun. And for me,
It's so
it's
funny.
fun.
Do you know how much in regular conversation I go, Corinne taught me da 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 da.
Yeah.
I think it's at least once a day.
Yeah.
Just FYI.
And now
No,
you know
so
about David Barton, and now you're going to go look up his books and go look up some of the quotes that he's fabricated. It's wild, wild, wild stuff. And I mean, it, we are in so many, I've heard so many, especially young people say, like, I'm tired of living in this once in a lifetime moment. Like, everything's supposed to be once in a lifetime, and it feels like it's happening all at once. Like, why is all of this happening at once? And so when you look at someone's commitment to rewrite history, you see how powerful it can be, because then people take it and talk
if
about
you
it as fact.
say the untrue thing enough, people think it's true.
Of
And
course,
they're really good at doing that.
because
They're really
they're putting
I
the
mean,
onus on you. Like, not
Micah
everybody.
Beckwith is coming to Salem 20 minutes from my house,
Yeah.
April 24th, and we're going to be doing a unity event like across the street from that, where we are going to praise unity and what we need to do to make sure we stop people in our government that want to hurt us. And
Hmm.
so, because a lot of people in Salem are not happy that he's coming.
And here's what I will say, just going out on Micah Beckwith. If there is ever a time where Micah Beckwith and his family or his congregation are being threatened and not allowed to practice their religion, I will stand next to them and fight for their right to practice it. That they have to be willing to do the same for me.
That
This
they
has
can't
never
tell
been
me
about.
I have to practice their religion, and
Yes.
that's what they want to do. They want to tell me I have to practice their religion. They can practice theirs. They can
Hmm.
do whatever they want. They can indoctrinate their own children. That's their right. They are not allowed to indoctrinate mine.
No. And so this is not about hating Christians or wanting to infringe upon their right to practice. I would stand beside Lieutenant Governor Beckwith and fight for his right to practice and preach how he wants to.
And I
Um,
honestly don't think yelling at him on his social media helps either. I think it just makes him more think that he has the right to hurt us.
mhm.
We have to fight him at the ballot box. We have to get better, great candidates. We have to help elect whoever runs for governor. I hope it's Jennifer McCormick.
And we have to be aware when he
We have to
goes
stop this
to.
and say you are not allowed to do this, and we will fight and call it out without calling out mean names to him. We can say what you are doing with your power is wrong.
And he's really just capitalizing on this moment that exists. And he's capitalizing on a moment that was really put into action in the 1980s. So he's lucky. He's just lucky that this is his ideology that he gets to exploit and capitalize upon. So it's just timing for him.
He
Um,
seems very driven to
he
do this.
is,
And
and in the
maybe
lens of
he really
history,
believes it, maybe he really
he
believes it. I don't
might.
know. I'm not Micah Beckwith. Maybe he knows it, uses it as a tool to control people. I don't know, but I do know that he doesn't have that right based on our Constitution and our founding
Mhm.
fathers. The separation of church and state was built for our peace. And so
Yep.
that we can practice the version of whatever God we want to, or we don't have to. That's so important.
And go check out how David Barton speaks about the separation of church and state. You'll see a very interesting interpretation of it originates from it's Thomas Jefferson's letter to the Baptists. So there was the Danbury Baptist Convention where the people that were
That's so
very
crazy. He's
concerned.
just taking this stuff and
Yeah,
just changing it and then
uh,
putting it out there and be like, look at this proof. And people are like, look at the proof.
because the Baptists were afraid that when the United States became a country, there would be a government established religion like the Church of England. And the Baptists were afraid they wouldn't be able to practice their faith. And Thomas Jefferson is reassuring them there is a wall between church and state.
You are protected. You
Yeah,
can
you are
go to the church
protected.
you want,
But
which
David
is
Barton reads that and he says, oh, no, 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 no. Look at this
mm,
quote that I found from Thomas Jefferson, which is a total lie. It's a fabricated quote. So it's just, that's
it's fascinating how just a few people with money and a well executed plan, how
money,
much damage they do to the whole
money and an
country.
effing microphone. That's
And
all they
the
need.
technology, the working
Hmm.
together, the plan, we have to do that on the other side to stop it. We have
Yep.
to work together. We don't have to all agree on everything, but we should agree that you should be able to worship whatever God or whichever church you want. We should all collectively, as a majority, agree on that and fight for it.
Yes.
And we need to in Indiana right now. We need to be doing that more. We need Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Independents, non-voting people to all stop and say, "Wait a minute, you shouldn't be telling my children what God, what version of your
Yeah.
of the church that my kids should be attending." And that's happening now. So, thanks for getting this out. I learned a lot. I'm horrified, but I'm hopeful that we can work
That's usually
together.
how most of our shows
I
end.
feel
Well,
like
that was
things might be
scary,
getting
but I'm
worse
glad
before
I
they
know.
get better, but I'm not
Yeah.
stopping. I'm not going to stop fighting for it. And I'm not going to not be able to sleep at night because I am trying and I am driven and I will keep going with my purpose to unite our community. So being your friend gives me hope. Just love to everybody out there that's discouraged right now. We can fight this. We will. It might take a few years. Don't give up. Work together. Get support. Lean on your friends and family when you need them, and then also give them support when they need you. And we can do this.
Yeah, I mean, think David Barton started this stuff in 1986, y'all. And he in
Hey,
2023, David Barton in 1986 to 2023, one of his adherents is the Speaker of the House.
we're
That's
we're
that's the long game David Barton was willing to play.
we're playing the long game with Project Next. We are very new. We just started mid-December, and we are
Yeah,
already at around almost 500,000 views of all of our
which is so
materials.
fun. That's really
So
cool.
help
Thanks
us
thanks for
share us, get us
everybody
out
for being
there.
here, for being there.
Subscribe to YouTube, please. Just look up Project Next and subscribe. And we're going to keep growing and we're going to build communities, share knowledge, care about each other, even when we're different and we mess up. And
Mhm.
we're going to keep doing this. So, love to everybody. Have a fantastic weekend, you guys. I got my
Yeah.
kid's birthday party tomorrow. It was canceled last week because of the flood. So,
Oh,
we're going to have
fun.
it
Oh, good.
tomorrow. So, I hope you have a great weekend, girl.
You too. Thank you, Sarah. Bye, y'all.
Bye, everybody. Love you guys.